You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 304 of Meet the Farmers. I am your host, Ben Eagle, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by David Exwood, who farms just south of Horsham in West Sussex and is the current Deputy President of the National Farmers Union. His farm consists of over 1,200 tenanted hectares in the heart of the Sussex Weald and includes arable land, dairy beef, a Sussex suckler herd and sheep. So a nice proper mixed farm there, as well as a farm shop, which was established back in 2003. And David works all this alongside his wife and two sons. He's held numerous leadership roles within the NFU, starting with branch chair, rising to Southeast Regional Chair, governance board member, and since being elected Deputy President in February 2024, he's become a key voice heard within farming debates. But looking forward to going a little bit behind him as a person today and finding out a little bit more. So in this episode, we're going to explore David's farming journey, his role within the NFU, and his views on the future of British agriculture, as well as its current state of affairs. David Exwood, welcome to Meet the Farmers.
Good afternoon. It's great to be with you.
Tell me a little bit about your part of the world, first of all, both in terms of landscape and the farming, because, I mean, it's quite diverse down there, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. So we farm in the heart of the Weald of Sussex. So we're a very busy part of the world. Gatwick Airport is not far away, but actually there's some great farmland, and it really is mixed. We can grow grass as well as anyone, but the Weald is well known for its heavy ground. So, arable crops do well, but it is quite limited in its cropping. But it is that kind of real mixed farming, a strong dairy area despite everything. But of course, it's not the strongest farming area in that there's so much other things going on here apart from farming. Farming is part of the landscape. We create the landscape, but there's so many other things going on in Sussex as well.
Yeah, which of course, I mean, we might get onto land use debates, but I mean, that's of course very current. Sussex is a place which has been going through that for donkey's years, really.
Indeed. And look, we have lots of people on our doorstep. There's lots of other business. There's lots of money. The cost of housing is very high. But look, it is a strong farming area. But I also have the rather unusual position of farming all around net, which everybody, the Great Rewilding experiment, which everybody will have heard of as well. So the contrasts are everywhere.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're a neighbour of Knepp.
I farm on three sides of them.
Oh, right. That's probably a whole other conversation in itself. Might have to get you back on for something about that. So tell us about the business itself in terms of how it's grown over time, how it's developed. Because you have, as I said in the intro, this mix of different enterprises.
So look, first thing to say, it's grown extraordinarily. I'm not from a farming family. My father was in the RAF. My mother had she had a very small farm, kept a few sheep, but it's not a traditional route into farming. I was very fortunate to be given a life tenancy at the age of 20. But the reason was it was a terrible farm that nobody else wanted. It was a pile of weeds with no water, electricity. It really was a mess. I'd been killing time to go in the army. I had a place at Sandhurst, and I went traveling to America. Always fancied going up there, and ended up working on farms out there. Loved it. Kind of stayed and then only came back for this, which is another story. But the point is, I started with 160 acres at the age of 20. That's 35, nearly 36 years ago now. And it has grown a lot from there. And we've constantly grown. We've constantly expanded. And so very much followed the path. I had a lot of sheep and arable originally. Then about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we flipped over to having a lot of cattle. So now we run, well, we got about We've got about 2,000 acres of arable, and that is half first wheats. The rest of it is break crops like wheat, winter oats, winter oilseed rape, maize, beans, and then the rest of it is grass of varying kinds. And we have lots of new lays, lots of productive clover, ryegrass lays. We grow winter barley and maize for the cattle, but also we have a lot of permanent pasture, some really high value pasture as well. So it's a real mix, and we got field sizes of all types and all kinds. But I suppose the first thing is it's all about the soil. Every farm is always about the soil, and our soil is silty clay. So to get the picture of it, it's 50% silt, 30% clay, 20% sand. That's typically what we farm, although it varies hugely within that. And you've got about 10 or 12 inches of that over solid yellow clay. So that pretty much defines what you can do. And we very much farm according to the capabilities of that.
Hmm. And I'm assuming in terms of land tenure, a mix of different agreements?
So my main landlord is a large public school called Christ's Hospital. You've probably never heard of it. It was a City of
Yep.
London school that moved out 120 years ago to relocate to a greenfield site in the middle of Sussex, and they built a big school on the middle of a former large dairy farm that had gone bankrupt. So they are my primary landlord. So I have 1,000 boarding children at the middle of my home farm. It's literally just over there. So again, quite a unique approach to life, because it provides a first-class education for City of London kids who come out, and so they know nothing about farming. They move out to the Sussex countryside. They know nothing about food production, and so that creates quite an interesting dynamic. So that is my primary landlord. I have one other significant landlord who is a private couple who happen to own 1,000 acres of land in Sussex, and then we have a number of other private landlords around there. We've got about 7 in total, and a real mix of tenures. Primarily, so I moved away from I traded the life tenancy in a long time ago for a more secure tenancy on a much larger acreage. And the farm has evolved. We have a lot more buildings. We have a lot more infrastructure than we ever had. But actually, so what I have now is primarily a retirement tenancy, so till I'm 65, and then everything else in between. But we are farmers. I think the first thing I'd say is we're not contract farmers. We're not contractors. We're not share farmers. We farm. We make our
Yeah.
money. This is a farming. We're not property owners. We don't make our money from renting out property or property development. That is part of what happens on the estate, but that's not where we make our money. And I find that a great discipline, partly because I love farming, and so that kind of fits right in with me. But it is important to understand that's how we make our money. It's literally from producing fat cattle, growing crops, and making a margin on what we sell them. That's it.
Yeah. And with that in mind, actually, I mean, it's quite a refreshing thing to hear, actually, in many ways, because I mean, we get quite a lot of younger people listening to this podcast and sort of writing in and say, how do I get on the ladder? How do I grow over time? Clearly, so you started with, was it 160 acres, you said, back in,
Yeah.
so back when you started. So what would be your advice through the course of a career, in terms of advancing the business with a pure focus on growing that agricultural business? What would you say to them?
I think, look, success comes with hard work. I think that's the first thing I would say. There's a lot of hard work behind that growth. I think the other thing is really be open to possibility, because opportunity never comes when you're ready for it. I don't think I've ever had the chance of another farm when I thought, oh yeah, now's the time. It's always when it's probably the last thing you want to do. But don't wait for opportunities to come when it's right. Take them when they come to you, and just grab them with both hands and don't look back. And absolutely just sort of drive forward. And I think the other thing I would say is that have a dream. I always say to anybody who wants to get into farming is have a dream, because look, my farm's evolved massively over time. It is not where I started, but I always had the next dream, my next plan. And the point about that is that if you have a dream, if you have a plan, what I've found is that as the years go by, every choice you make, every decision you take, every investment you make will facilitate that dream. It may not be directly related to it, but what it won't do is stop it. It'll make it more likely to happen. So when the day comes when you can take that opportunity, you'll be able to take it. So I do mean it. It sounds very corny to say if you don't have a dream, it won't come true. but there's really some truth behind that. And that's what I've constantly found is just and I always have a plan. I always have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. I know exactly where I want to be. It changes. Of
Yeah.
course, it doesn't work out, but have a plan.
Yeah, I was going to say there'll be flexibility within that, but you've got to have that vision in order to have something to aim for. I mean, there's one age-old cliche, isn't there, in farming that live as if you'll die tomorrow, but farm as if you're going to live forever. Um, how would you describe your approach to life and to farming?
I think the first thing I would say is don't waste a minute. I lost somebody who was very, very close to me at a very young age. And it was incredibly difficult. And I know what it's like to lose everything you have. And that has taught me that we are not here for long. And there's no point waiting for good things to happen. And time goes so quickly. So do not waste a minute. Take every opportunity, do everything, get the most out of yourself. And that's me, and that's how I am. But I enjoy it. I don't do it, just to keep myself busy. I do it because I love it. I think the other thing is, just as you said, is farm for the long term. Farming's a long term business. It is that thing of farms if you're going to farm it forever, because that's partly the best way to get the best out of the land and get the best results from the land. But also, farming's a small world, and you will come across people time and time again, and to find it's all about the people. Life is about people, and if you like people, want to get on with them, you treat people well, look after them, you get back what you give out. It doesn't always work. You don't always get it right. And I always say, I have made every mistake in the book. And I promise you, anybody who's listening, I genuinely have made every mistake in the book. The key is I try not to make them twice. That's the point. But it is all about the people. I love the people of farming. I love working with the people of farming and the people around it as well. I love my customers in the farm shop. I love the people who live locally, working with people. But I suppose the other thing I really realized over time is that farms are a reflection of people's personalities. They're this amazing blank canvas that is just a reflection of who you are as a person. And obviously, there are different constraints. You might own it, you might rent it, you might share farm it, you might be the farm manager, whatever. You might be involved in so many ways, but the choices you make, how you do with that farm, will reflect who you are. And you can see that. You see that everywhere I go. And what that means is that no two farms are the same. No two farmers are the same. No two systems are the same. The variation and the different answers to the same problem are huge. And that's what makes it so interesting. It keeps me endlessly interested. No 2 days are ever the same. And I really promise that. I don't think I've ever had 2 days the same in my entire sort of 30-some year career. And that's a brilliant, brilliant thing. And the variety is part of it.
I think I probably know the answer to this question anyway, but would you say that you are and have always been a people person?
It's interesting. I think we change as we got older. Look, I've always liked people and I've always sort of got on with people, but I think my confidence has grown with age. I think when you're your teens and 20s, it's not so easy, and you kind of grow with confidence like that. But yeah, no, I've always liked people. I find people interesting. I think you can learn from everybody. I've never met anybody I haven't been able to learn something from. Everybody has something valuable to say, and listening to people. I love people watching. I mean, I love it. I mean, give me a chance. So one of the best things I can do is spend Saturday morning in the shop, just an hour or two in the shop. I know loads of the customers, their personal friends, but just talking to people, and they'll come in and they'll ask me a question about the produce or what's going on at the farm, or probably have a go at me about something, and we did something wrong, and they won't take the opportunity to tell me. But yeah, just engaging with people is a huge amount of fun, and just take it as it comes.
Holding that thought, you have, of course, recently taken on the role of Deputy President of the NFU. So turning to leadership, I suppose, and with that in mind, how would you describe your leadership style? And moving on to the role generally, I suppose, what are your top priorities for your tenure, would you say?
My leadership style, I think the first thing I realised quite a while ago about myself, and this does go back probably into my teen years, that I've never been afraid of anyone or authority. And that doesn't mean to say I'm arrogant towards them, but I just treat everybody as people, no matter who they are. Look them in the eye, tell them what you think, Don't be intimidated by anyone. And that is very much, and just treat people as equals. That's sort of the point. And that's part, I love farming for that as well, because you engage with everybody. So don't be afraid of everybody. Uh, I'm very much a collaborative worker. I think that's how you get things done. Everybody, look, of course, there are different deals. There are winners and losers. Some things go well, some things don't go well. But generally speaking, things are best when everybody gets something out of the problem, the solution. When you're trying to find a solution, you bring people together and everybody wins and work with people. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is able to do it all on their own. And if they think they can, they've probably got it wrong. So you have to work with people. So understand what people want, what they need, listen to them, and try and work with them. So and we achieve more together. I think we are definitely stronger together. I also strongly believe that there is a value for integrity in the modern world. There is a sort of perception that you've got to be competitive and outdo other people to get on and outcompete. And look, I'm as competitive as anyone. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be telling the truth if I said I'm not competitive. But you can be competitive and be straight with people, tell the truth, answer the question, have personal values. And I am my biggest critic. There is no bigger critic myself than myself. And I learned that a while ago as well, that some of the greatest people, and that's not to say me, but some of the people that have impressed me most are the people who are hardest on themselves. That's not because being hard on yourself is a good thing, but the point is they decide themselves first and other people second. So I think, I do think that integrity has a place, because I think it opens doors. People have to trust you. And if you're gonna do that collaborative working, in my job, you've got to be able to open doors. The door's slammed shut before you've even got there, you've got a problem. So, look, integrity, and then moving on to priorities. Well, look, in the general state, I'm here to make life easier for farmers. Sometimes that's making life less bad for farmers, and they probably don't appreciate what you're doing, and I completely understand that. The reason I'm so passionate about the NFU and the role I have is that I think you can make a real difference for farmers, and in a way that you can't in any other way. And I know there are people who criticise the NFU and everything about it, but genuinely, it does so much good for farming. Every day we are achieving things that make things different. And what really terrifies me is that if we weren't there, I always think, what the hell would happen? I just think, oh my, we would be trampled over. But there's some real look. I can evidence the success of the NFU, but that's why I do it. There's some really intelligent people who work for the organisation, and it's an incredibly capable organisation that can do so much. In terms of my personal priorities, I mean, obviously I support the office holder team of Tom and Rachel, and we work together and we try and help each other achieve all our aims. I mean, my priorities and my policy areas that I have at the moment are ELMS and SFI. That's a massive subject. I would probably talk about that.
Yep.
Tenants I look after tenants, and I do a huge amount of work on tenants. Farm safety, another massive topic, very topical. Productivity and ag tech. I mean, that's something we're working on hugely. And EU reset. So working on the EU and everything that's happening with some of our international relations is something I do. So look, there's a very few of my policy priorities, but I look after a number of things, as well as so I chair governance board. So it's the internal working of the NFU. It's actually a big organisation. There's lots of people trying to make sure that the organisation, and help make sure it's a team effort. It's certainly not down to me. Make sure that the NFU is there to be able to help members. We've got to have the resources and the capability to really make a difference, and that's probably the number one priority.
Not a small list, and we'll definitely dig into some of those. But I want to pause on this idea of working with people. And I mean, the agriculture sector, as we know, is deeply affected by policy and politics, especially, I mean, you could probably say that at all times in history, but I'm going to say especially at the moment. So in terms of navigating that balance between representing farmers' interests, but also engaging with government priorities and going in as a listener, as well as having an agenda, especially around budgets, but also around climate sustainability. How do you navigate that when you go into the room?
I find that really easy because the answer is we need farmers. And the answer to most problems is farming and getting farming right. So I don't see them as competing priorities. That's my point. I don't see that what the government needs and what our members need are necessarily different things. And sometimes it's making people realise that they're the same things. It's actually demonstrating the value of farming. Look, if you want clean water, there's things that there's so much farming can do. If you want safe, nutritious food, if you want a food supply, we can help. If you want biodiversity, we manage 70% of the land. Why would you not work with farmers? And I suppose, so it's just that core value of food and farming. I think the other thing is that it's just really, so following on from that, is that getting the farmer, government and other people around the industry to see the value of farmers and to trust them. We've had an extraordinary period where farming has had various amounts of government money, and that has sort of led to a situation where farmers have felt very defensive and not felt trusted. And I think that is completely wrong and needs turning on its head. And the answer is, if you trust farmers, they will take good decisions and do the right thing. And actually, this thing that other people know best and they just need to tell farmers what to do is fundamentally wrong. Let farmers choose. They are very, they know their farms best. They know what they're trying to do, and help them in those choices. But trusting farmers is a really important thing. And I always say to the government, because trust farmers. I'm sure they'll come through to you.
How does that message ring true within those political voices that you're speaking with within that audience when you go to them with that message?
Well, let's look at the move away from EU-style CAP payments. I think many people thought that would be, very difficult and something the farming industry wouldn't welcome. Actually, they've taken SFI, that move to sort of sustainable farming and payments for the incentives for doing that, and they've embraced it and they've run with it. And they've really gone with it, and to the extent that, and you can put it apart, but the extent that it's been too successful, and it's gone really, really well. But you're not hearing farmers going, bringing back direct payments. I'm sure people would like the certainty of that kind of guaranteed income. I do understand the challenges as a tenant. I understand better than anyone the challenges that the effective ending of direct payments has meant. But actually, farmers are proud of what they do. They're proud of the food they produce. They're proud of the animals that that leave their farm. They're proud, they're proud of everything they produce. And so if that, that's the clue really that tells you that actually that pride, it means you can trust them.
Two of the labels you were talking about earlier were, one, productivity, and two, top of the list, ELMS and that side of environmental payments. Big question here, but how do we navigate that balance between those two? And I know that certainly we await Baroness Batter's, Minette Batter's review when that eventually comes out as well, which I'm sure this will touch on that balance. But what are your thoughts?
So the first thing is productivity is the answer to everything. I don't care what the question is. I say the answer is productivity. We need to be more productive. What does that mean? We've got to produce the food. I absolutely refuse to accept that the right thing to do is produce less food here and import it. It's a nonsense, and I'll challenge it every day of the week, and I'll be right. And I know that. So we have to produce the food. So it's maintaining or increasing production. But look, whether it's net zero, biodiversity, affordability, the farmer profit, being more, and that's probably number one, I should say, being more productive is the answer, because it means you can make best use of the land you've got, you reduce your carbon footprint, you're more efficient, you will have a greater margin, make more money. So productivity is absolutely the key, and that should be at the heart of everything everybody's trying to do, not just the government. And I would say there's very much a tendency to look to the government for answers. Don't get me wrong, they influence our lives in so many ways. But look, the conversations we have with the people who supply farming, so some of the merchants, agronomists, people like that, the people we sell to, how can we be more productive? How can we use technology. We can come on to that. And then ELMS, look, the key question around ELMS, and look, I was really pleased with the spending review result. That was a great win for farming. Even though even though it was standstill in the context, we need to be very clear. But there are some really large unanswered questions about how that money is going to be spent, particularly the split of that budget, that sort of 2.5 million pounds that's in the annual budget for England for DEFRA. The key point, and I can't emphasize enough, is that the answer is land sharing. So rather than a vision for the future where, and for ELMS, where farmers just farm really intensively and do just, nobody really cares what they do over here, producing food. And over here, it's only about the environment and there's no food production. It's just purely about high value environmental gain. We want to make a real difference. The trouble is, there's just not enough land to do that. And it won't work. It will work up to a point, but it won't. There is a far, far greater price from land sharing. So doing all the things we can from the same piece of land at the same time. So producing food in a more sustainable world, in a way that can be a great habitat for wildlife, that will make sure we have clean water. That land sharing is absolutely how ELMS has to be driven, and get that right. What that means, it is about sustainable farming. If we manage 70% of the land and you want to make a difference to as much of the land as possible, don't tell me it doesn't about how you manage that land. So I watch with interest, and we do not know the answer yet about the government's decision on this. But I think if they turn their back on the bulk of the farmland in the UK, they would have made a massive, massive mistake. Because actually, if they want change at scale, and the opportunities change at scale, doing stuff on 5 or 10% of the land is doing stuff on 5 or 10% of the land. If you want to change the world, you do it on 50, 60, 70, 80% of the land. That's how to make a difference.
Just sticking with policy for a little bit before we move on. If you could change one policy direction, being quite open here, what would you change if you had 100% power to do so?
I'm going to be really cheeky and pick two, but look, mostly because I have to talk about inheritance tax. It's the elephant in the room. This is we don't need to replay that argument, apart from to say it is the most appalling bit of politics I think I've ever seen. Even, and I don't agree with the policy, but even if you agreed with it, would you do it this way? No, you wouldn't. To drop it on the industry, consulted, without any notice, and then just rip up the rule book of the last 30 years. It was just the maddest thing I think I've ever seen, unsurprisingly. And then the uncompromising approach of the government to it now has just meant that we've had this absolutely locked horns on it. And the problem with that is that it's just mean that until, for many farmers, it has put them in an impossible position, particularly around the age. It's the elderly farmers who are in these impossible positions. And I've got close personal friends who are in this position. I mean, we all know people everywhere who are now in these impossible positions. But it's ripped the confidence out of the industry. It's destroyed investment and progress just at the time when we need to progress most. So, look, getting the government to do something to move on IHT and actually, do something that the industry recognises as something that will make a significant difference and allow us all to move forward is really important. But that's a kind of given, really. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what I'm going to say too.
That's
the
one I thought you were going to talk about.
Yeah, it is. But look, but I think everybody would say that. That's the point. Is it that's I do mean, so in terms of policy, and just going to hit back to what we were just talking about, getting SFI right is key now. If I had the choice, I would get SFI right for farmers and environmentalists. This isn't just about making it super farmer friendly and just sort of and not considering how we achieve environmental outcomes from it as well. Farmers have embraced it. It's such a left or right moment. So many farmers have seen that they can farm slightly differently, do that land sharing thing, and really gone a long way down that path already. If the government structure SFI wrong, they basically give it the wrong options and revert to a much more stewardship type agreement we had in the past, if they don't fund it properly, too much of that money is split away from SFI, farmers on the whole will turn away from it. And I think that will be I think with hindsight, that will be the missed opportunity of a generation. And I really mean that. It feels very consequential, the coming weeks.
SFI aside, on the IHT issue, will the NFU just, I mean, assuming that nothing happens before April 26, which is, dare I say it, looking unlikely that we're going to see a shift before then, but will this be a long-term push that the NFU will just continue to fight against this policy change?
Yeah, look, I think, well, I wouldn't take it that nothing happens for April, but look, I can accept cynicism. That's perfectly reasonable point of view, but no, it doesn't go away. We have to structure the industry, and I do welcome some of the succession conversations that have happened in families as a result of this. And I'm a firm fan of getting younger people in charge of businesses. You'll notice from my history and how I
Yeah,
started,
absolutely.
I giving young people responsibility is a really is something I'm incredibly passionate about. But that aside, we have to find a way of owning the major asset of farming, and that being able to be used and available for farming in a way that doesn't cripple the business. I think that's what I'd say. So getting IHT right going forward is absolutely going to be a priority of the NFU. And looking, if it takes to try to resort it with the next government, well, so be it.
Putting a positive vision on all this and turning to a vision for the future, I suppose, a vision for agriculture as it evolves over the next decade. There's a lot of challenges out there, as we know, but also huge amounts of opportunities if you look at it in the right direction, but also different directions that people could go in as well with their businesses. So if you was to look into the future in 10 years' time, what does farming look like in a UK context then?
Well, I think this challenge is the same the world over. But look, in the UK context, the first thing to say is, despite everything we've talked about, I've never been more excited about my farming at home. The opportunity and the possibility that is coming is so exciting. And every day I get out on the farm, I'm itching to do it and get on with it and see what happens. And so the vision and the challenge is to produce more food with less impact. That has to be the challenge of the next 10 years. We need the food. We know we've got to grow it. We've got a growing population in this country alone. So if we're going to maintain that kind of food security, that level of home production, we've got to produce more. It's not even about maintaining current levels of production, but we've got to do it with less impact. We've got to use less fuel, less fertilizer, less inputs. We've got to try and increase our biodiversity, our soil health, cleaner water, all those things. So more with less impact. How do we do that? Well, farm management is getting more complicated. It's getting a more difficult business. It's getting more complex. My farm is a complex farm, and the days of sort of simple monocultures feels like they're over.
Yeah.
So we have to raise the level of our farm management, but that means more choices and more complex choices. So how do we help with that? Well, the answer is we use technology and probably artificial intelligence to understand the mass of data out there and help us make smart choices about what we do, when we do, and how little we need to intervene to achieve that higher production. I mean, and I look at my phone. I mean, my phone. I run my farm from my phone. We all do. It's what's happened.
Yeah.
That phone has so much information in it. There's so much data in there. I can't use it all. You literally can't. To wade through it is a job in itself. But surely the answer is to use AI to interpret that data so that when I just what are we spray am I going to use? When am I going to plant? When do we combine? All those things. What variety do I grow? What fertilizer do I use? All those choices will be driven by AI analysis of the data that we are already collecting. And that will give us smarter choices, better choices. And then when you couple that with better technology, and we could talk about ag tech and industrial strategy and all that, because that's a whole thing in itself that happened a week ago. We use better technology to do what we do. So I'm pretty sure that the days of having a boom sprayer applying a chemical to the whole field, certainly with herbicides and some of the things, those days surely will come to an end. There are better ways of doing it. If you've got weeds across 20% of your field and you're applying full rate herbicide to the 100%, we can do better than that.
You mentioned the industrial strategy there. We're recording this on the 9th of July. It won't be out for another few weeks yet. But I mean, there's also been things like the National Infrastructure Plan that have come out as well, and these sort of broad, big visions for the national future. There's some mention of water in there, reservoirs, but your thoughts on this in terms of integrating and whether whether the government is currently going far enough on that integration of a farming vision within that context.
Well, look, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, we're drowning under consultations at the moment. Land use framework, food strategy, farming roadmap,
They're everywhere.
environmental improvement plan. I mean, and what the hell do they all mean? Does anybody really know? I wonder sometimes. How these work, what they mean for farmers, how they're relevant to, somebody listening out there going, well, what does that mean for me? Great question. And how they all interact. But is the government joined up thinking on this? Probably not as much as we would like it to be. Is there the money to do the things that we probably should be doing? For example, moving water around the country. We way too much water in the west and not enough in the east, broadly speaking. No, there isn't. But I think what I'm really pleased, so there was the recent announcement on ag tech as being part of the industrial strategy, and that puts agriculture, ag tech on a par with automotive, aerospace, batteries, some of our leading industrial sectors. We're now alongside it. Now that is a huge opportunity because we have world leading, and let's be clear, we do mean many world leading research and institutes and universities in this country. We've got to take that ability to find answers and translate it into things that happen on the farm and that make a difference. And we've outlined some of the ways that it might. Why have the government done that? Because actually, food and farming is still the biggest sector of the economy. It's over 100 billion. It's a massive, massive sector. It's so important. We export a lot of high value food in this country, and they know from their own data and looking around the world, and investing in ag tech will give a return. So when they invest, £100 million, they're going to get it back and more because it will make our economy more efficient, more productive, and increase the amount of money we earn. So it's really huge. It's really important, and there is no bigger challenge. And finally, the great thing that does unlock is it gives the NFU and the industry the ability and the authority to go knocking on other doors apart from DEFRA, and again, to come into conversation with all of agriculture industry, and not just talking to DEFRA, but actually going to DBT, Department for Business and Trade, and Skills, Innovation, Technology, going to them and saying, look, we've got a great thing here. How can we work together? What can you do for us? What can we do for you? How can we work together? Back to that collaboration. And that is a really exciting conversation that is only just beginning.
It's a bit of personal things, and I know that this question comes up for a lot with NFU office holders. But in terms of balancing your time in the role versus your time back at home on the farm, how do you manage that? Is that typical word? That's that word balance that comes up again and again, increasingly it seems in farming.
Yeah, I get asked. The first question I get asked is, "Do you enjoy the job?" Which I always think that presumably that means I can't be. It's so impossible at the moment. It must be hell on earth. But the answer is, it's the greatest job in the world. And anybody who's got any aspiration to lead or advocate the industry, I would say do it, because you will find it incredibly rewarding. So it is a great job, but it is pretty all consuming, and that's life. The thing about being an NFU office holder, it's not a forever job. I will be here. I will have my time. I will go. That's the role. And I want to give it my absolute all while I have the chance. And that's why I work so hard at it, and I love it. And so really, if I said to you, but I need to, do all this, that, and the other as well. No, that'll wait. That'll wait till I've finished doing this, and I will have plenty of time to do that, I'm sure. I love both my jobs. I love representing farming through the NFU and the industry. And I love my farm at home. I don't come home and go, I can't wait to get out on the farm and see what's happening. Getting the chance to work with my family is just the greatest thing. It has its moments, but honestly, it's something of I enjoyed so much. So the answer is I don't. Look, of course, it's good to get off the farm and all that, but I don't feel like I need a holiday that much. But look, we all need downtime. We all need to have a mental break. Two things really. One, getting off the farm, just getting away from it. We live and breathe everything we do, and just to take ourselves out of that situation is really important. So look, getting away. This time of year, getting off the beach. Going paddle boarding together with my wife. It's just a huge, huge fun. We absolutely love that. We love trips around. It's a great part of the world here. We can access many, many things. I'm a huge fan of dance music. We went to see Pete Tong
Oh,
recently,
really?
and and we just had an absolute blast. So, I'm quite I like many different things. I'm not probably people. It'd be hard to pigeonhole me about what I like and don't like. I think is the thing I would say. But actually, my relaxations, my family are engineers, probably first more than anything else. Electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. We like physical things. And so actually what I do to relax when I can't get off the farm and I just want to change the scene, I have two things. When I worked in America, when the minute I got home, I bought an American Jeep, like a CJ7.
Okay.
So it's a 1970s Jeep, and I've had that for 35 years now. And I love working on that. I love driving in this time of year. It's so much fun, and it takes me right back to my days there. And I have an A640 John Deere, so we run John Deeres here. I have a big articulated 1980s John Deere, which again I drove many things in America, but I always loved that first articulated tractor I drove, and I got the chance to buy one. They're very rare in this country. Hugely fortunate to be able to buy one 5 years ago now, and I just love working on that. And last Saturday, I just had a few hours in the afternoon, so I went and did a few jobs on that. And I will spend many an hour driving it in the summer when I have a few weeks away from the NFU over August, and that is my greatest relaxation.
Gonna have to start to round this up. So perhaps sort of final thoughts as we go. I mean, first one, if you had a magic wand to make one big change in UK farming, what would it be?
I think in the current circumstances, people feel more positive. People just really a really big dose of positivity back into the industry. We're a great industry. We're a great country to be growing food. We've got the infrastructure. We've got the soil. We've got the weather. I know it frustrates us, we are a great country to be growing food, and we should be. And I want people to feel that positivity, because actually that's the key, really. And farming is great at solving the problems. The great problem at the moment with the politics is they keep interfering. If we just knew what we knew, we'd get on and solve the rest of the problems, get on with it. So part of the job is government to decide what it is and isn't doing, and then leave us to the rest of it. So that positivity in farming would be the one thing I want to change.
We started this interview talking about farming for the long term, really. And we're at a time now when a lot of people are facing that choice of they're looking into the future, they're looking at all the changes, they're looking at the challenges, but also what could be as well, and thinking, you know what, do I see myself here in 10 years' time, 20 years' time? And if I do, what do I need to do? What do I need to invest in order to stay that future? If there's someone who's sort of a little bit more on the fence, what would you say to them to convince them, you know what, hang in there, it's going to be okay. The future looks good.
I think first thing I'm going to say is there's no right or wrong, and it's got to be works for you. Back to that, everybody's different thing. Everybody's got to make their own choices. But I was strong observation I would make over my farming career of nearly 40 years that policy fashion comes and goes. Policy, government money comes and goes. The latest important thing, most vital thing will come, but it will go again. The one thing that remains is food production. Investing in that core food production actually is the thing that will pay best over the longest time. And I really strongly believe that. That's what I've so many times I've been told to give up farming. And I've kept at it, and I've made a lot of money, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I haven't listened, and I don't regret one bit of that. And it's kept us in business.
I'm going to ask the last two questions I ask everyone who comes on the show. The first is a message for the public, and the second is a message to your fellow farmers. David, what would be your message to the public be at the moment?
Find out more about your food and where it comes from. Look, everybody makes choices, and I don't think anybody should tell anybody what to eat. But I encourage, look, good food is at the heart of a good and long and healthy life. So it's partly why I have a farm shop. That's what I do. And actually, I would ask everybody in the country to find out more about where their food comes from and how it's produced. That is how you make good food choices. And there's no downside to knowing what you're eating every day, where it comes from, and how it's produced. You'll live better for it.
And your message to your fellow farmers?
You're needed. We need you. Everybody needs you. Everybody eats 3 times a day. Don't give up. Don't go away, because you're needed more than anybody else. And in an uncertain and volatile world, my God, it is at the moment, is you are needed. And please have faith in that and don't lose sight of that.
Well, David, we will leave it there. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. That's it for today. A huge thank you to my guest, David Exwood, for coming on the show. Thank you also for listening. If you don't already subscribe to the show, perhaps this is your first time listening, please hit that subscribe button now. We have a different farmer every week, and lots more coming. Next time, we'll be in the States, actually. We'll be in Indiana, and I'll be joined by Shane and Val Wallace. But for now, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers, and thank you very much for listening.